does all right in some other industries. Why would I choose to work in marketing and advertising? I genuinely love marketing. I genuinely love storytelling like that. I love the fact that we can jump into conversations and tell a wide variety of stories. For me and for my company at Maximum Effort, there's more ideas than there are places to tell those stories. Marketing really allows us an opportunity, like a sort of a super highway to kind of get that done.
Because Nicepool's, as much as he projected that he was wonderful, he was a terrible human being, and I like that Deadpool gets to lean into that anti-hero thing and gets to lean into his childlike desires. I want that, be it Nicepool's, his gold-plated or his dog that really should be with Wade because the dog and Wade look the same. I like sort of acting out envy in that way because it's a very normal human feeling, and it's something that is actually easy to play.
We help each other. We work together so much. The iconic rooftop scene in this movie, my husband actually wrote it. Nobody knows that but you now. He wrote it. He works on everything I do. I work on everything he does. So his wins, his celebrations are mine, and mine are his. I mean, he's all over this film.
Hi, friends. It's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. Why did Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni's collaborative relationship break down? How did we get to a place where two creatives in the world of Hollywood could become enemies? Could there have been someone triangulating them against each other? Could it be a combination of two narcissists triangulating people? There's a lot of theories that Ryan Reynolds and his jealousy and his envy and his anger towards Justin Baldoni led the charge against his rage and his desire to take him down. There's been theories that we've discussed about how Ryan Reynolds used his power as the face of the franchise of Deadpool and creative differences with Tim Miller, the director, to oust Tim from the sequel, Deadpool 2. Tim Miller, in a podcast, shared that he left the franchise because it was clear that Ryan, as the face of the franchise, had more control, even though he wasn't the producer or the director, because the studio would go with him as the face. He was able to wield control away. And he wanted so much control on the set of the first Deadpool that everything felt like a fight. And it was not a fight he was willing to have for the next movie. This is a theory brought up by Baldoni's lawyers that perhaps Blake watched what her husband did on that set and wanted to replicate what her husband did and get the face of the franchise because she believed she was becoming the face of a franchise. She was becoming Lily Bloom. And the face of the franchise can get things if they have power. Now, Blake learned in her previous movie, in the rhythm section, which bombed at box offices, that because she held no producer credit or director or even holding anything beyond casting, that having creative differences with the production won't work if you have no title. She complained about how producers on previous films treated her, mistreated her, didn't listen to her. And creative differences on the set of Rhythm Section actually created a very hostile environment for the producers and for Blake, because Blake's vision of the film was not the way the direction of the film went. The film tanked. There was no sequels made, despite there being multiple books in the series. And Blake needed a new franchise and a new author to exploit. Blake and Ryan are paranoid about being replaced. This is a topic that Blake has discussed on the red carpet, that women are replaceable and they're told they're replaceable.
I've always been aware of it, and it's just been one of those things where, if you say something about it, they say, well, someone else, you don't do it if you pass on this movie because of that, and someone else will do it. And I've passed on the movie, and someone else did do it. It's this thing where women are really treated like they're completely disposable.
Hollywood is competitive for men and for women. It's probably equally competitive. There are as many men and women that want to be famous, and there's certainly not enough spots in films. And there will always be someone else willing to do something that one actress or actor doesn't want to do. It's an unfortunate part of the world where you're in a highly competitive field where less than a fraction, like a tiny percentage of actors and actresses that actually become elite, it's very hard to get there. It's less than 1%. I mean, it's probably 0.0001% when you look at how many people try to become actors and actresses. And that's a side effect of the industry that you embrace when you go into this field. But that fear that you are replaceable can drive actors and actresses and people in this industry to be desperate and to do things that are desperate. And the need for control and for taking over franchises is a way to secure your spot and give you a sense of security in a field where there's not security to be had. Actors are moving from one job to the next, to the next, to the next. There's no stability. They could have a huge year one year and then nothing for years, especially if the box office tanks. Both Ryan and Blake have admitted that they do everything together and they're always involved in each other's projects. She has done podcasts where she claims that Deadpool and Wolverine showed up for this film in big ways on the production side and on the marketing side. Mr. Reynolds has a marketing company called Maximum Effort, where he claims that he's a savant and a genius in marketing. This is a way for him to have some control and stability in his world because he's then directing and making content and getting paid outside of just acting. It's also why they have so many brands because they need avenues of income outside of acting to fund their out of control lifestyle, which is they have so much money at this point. But when you live big, you have big bills. And they needed the next big thing. And there's always someone else in Hollywood that will take the spot. Wayfair Studios was starting to make a name for itself as it was leading in putting out docuseries and was working with a lot of different big names in Hollywood. And every time a new studio is in the market, it becomes competitive to other people that are in the industry. Whilst production companies are becoming harder and harder to stay in business with streaming and the massive push to streaming and the push out of movie theaters, with the system in Hollywood changing, it's becoming cutthroat in studios. And people are taking really wild methods in order to continue to stay in business, to stay on top, to keep their income going. And some people can view other studios as threats. They can view other men as threats. And Ryan, his imprint, as in Blake's own words, is all over this film. And if you look at Ryan, his anger with Justin happens not because of perceived conversations that happen on the set. His issue with Justin happened before Blake stepped foot on set. His anger was evident when you can look back now and see that Blake isn't the one that wrote the rooftop scene. And it was Ryan that insulted by the fact that Justin did not take the feedback and didn't say, yes, this is the scene we're going to use. And this is great. I can't wait to implement this and change the script. That perceived slight that their product and what they did wasn't good enough seems to be what was the catalyst. That rejection seems to be the catalyst that propelled and motivated these threats and perceived threats that Miss Lively said happened to her on the set with, the sexual harassment, the fat shaming. But it's Ryan's own anxiety that he claims can cause him to have spiraling thoughts to make him feel like things that are happening aren't actually happening. So Ryan says he has such debilitating anxiety that when his mind spins, he can create perceived threats that don't even exist. He can create conflict that's not even there. And when he gets out of control like that, he's not a pleasant person to live with. So if he's dealing with his out of control anxiety, which he's sort of using as a crutch to behave like a monster, he starts attacking Justin. And I want to show to you why I figured this out. Up until the point where Justin rebuffed the scene, the rooftop scene, and refused to immediately implement the changes, everything had been going well, relatively okay with Lively and Baldoni. But in his amended complaint, this is what Baldoni writes. Another example, early in pre-production stage, Lively sent Baldoni a long text describing how directors never permitted her to write scenes for movies. She acted in nor gave her writing credits, even making her hand scribble her suggestions for lines so that they could not be traced to her. Lively boasted that she had even written for her husband's movies. Then Lively asked if she could take a pass at writing the rooftop scene in It Ends With Us, in which the characters Ryle and Lily first meet. This pivotal scene, much beloved by book fans, was critical for setting the tone for the movie. So Baldoni was reluctant to allow an actor rather than a union screenwriter to rewrite this scene. But Baldoni felt the need to allow Lively to rewrite the scene and agreed to take a look at what she put together. As we uncovered yesterday, we know that Ryan is a WGA member. We also know that this set is using WGA screenwriters, and they're using everything is through the guild. They are using all union members for this film. And so you have to have and follow the rules, or you can get in trouble with the union. And the director has to be aware. And so he allows her a pass, but he doesn't have to give her this option because she's not on the Writers Guild. But she made an interesting admission there. She said that she had written for her husband's movies, but didn't get credit. It's like almost like she's telling him without saying things like, well, I've done this before, almost alluding to the fact that this is what's going to happen, like reverse, like Ryan is going to be the writer here and not get credit. So the draft of the rooftop scene that Lively sent Baldoni dramatically differed from what had been written originally. Baldoni was hesitant about many of the changes, but thanked Lively for her passion and diplomatically told her that the scene would likely end up being somewhere between the original version and Lively's version. Seemingly stung by Baldoni's exceedingly mild resistance, Lively did not respond and went silent for multiple days. Later, she confirmed in a text message below that Baldoni's response, of course, didn't feel great for me, or another mega celebrity friend and Ryan Reynolds, to have my passion praised instead of my specific contribution. Lively was referring to an earlier meeting where Lively summoned Baldoni to her New York penthouse, where Baldoni was greeted by Ryan Reynolds, who launched into enthusiastic praise for Lively's version of the scene. Hours later, as the meeting was ending, a famous and famously close friend of Reynolds and Lively walked into the room and similarly began praising Lively's script. Baldoni understood the subtext. He needed to comply with Lively's direction for the script. Later, he felt obliged to text Lively to say that he liked her pages and hadn't needed Reynolds or her mega celebrity friend to pressure him. Lively responded, the two were her dragons. Lively went on to say, they, Reynolds and Taylor Swift, we know, also know I'm not always good at making sure I'm seen and utilized for fear of threatening egos or fear of affecting the ease of the process. They don't give a shit about that. And because of that, everyone listens to them with immense respect and enthusiasm. So I guess I have to stop worrying about people liking me. I don't know. The message could not have been clearer. Baldoni was not just dealing with Lively, he was also facing Lively's dragons, two of the most influential and wealthiest celebrities in the world who were not afraid of making things very difficult for him. For a narcissist, if Ryan Reynolds is one, and I'm starting to think he might be, and I think he's using his narcissistic anxiety as a crutch for his very outlandish behavior. But you don't have to do very much to piss off a narcissist. All you have to do is like offend them in a very mild way, and they will lash out and you become their enemy because they feel like you're attacking their brilliance. And any tiny like level of attack against them can feel like you're attacking their ego. And they will go into full on beast mode to destroy you. And that's when everything starts spiraling out of control. That all happens in April. Like April 14th is around the time that she sends the messages, April 15th, about the dragons, about Ryan and Taylor being on her side. And you start to realize that it's that rejection, that single rejection of not embracing Ryan as a scriptwriter, not embracing Ryan's savant-like marketing genius, not embracing Ryan that pulls this thing out of control. Ryan wanted control of this film, and his wife was the face, sort of like Ryan's the puppet master behind the scenes, pulling Blake to do his work for him. She's claiming she's doing all this and she's covering for him, right? And it's then they find out a year later when she's out on the red carpet that it was actually her husband that wrote the scene, right? So she has this whole big fight with him about this scene, and she's so upset because she can't believe he would not take her feedback and see her. But it's really Ryan that wrote it. So we're now recognizing and understanding that her meltdown about that was about Ryan's ego being hurt. And this is where Ryan's spiraling anxiety and perceived threats against him and misunderstanding and misperceiving people's intentions and spiraling into a web of, you know, every single thing that's been done to him is somehow vindictive and evil and everybody's motives are wrong. He starts looking at Baldoni as the enemy. And then this so-called interaction with the personal trainer happens a week later. It almost feels like they're setting him up to fail. They're like giving him access to things, but then if he does one thing slightly wrong, it's going to be weaponized against him. And that's what happens. He's going to the personal trainer to try to get help for his back, to strengthen his back. And mind you, he is 6'2", but Miss Lively is 5'10". So there's only like a 3-inch difference in their heights. And he needs to prepare himself because there's a scene in this film where he has to lift her up. And she's not small. She's around the same height as he is. So this inquiry about how he can strengthen his back and the request to understand what kind of weight he's dealing with is then viewed as fat shaming. And so the week before, when he rejects Ryan's rooftop scene, he is then summoned to the house on April 25th, where Ryan says to him, "How dare you fucking ask about my wife's weight? What's wrong with you?" And Reynolds and Lively are so aggressive that Baldoni felt he had no choice but to offer repeated and completely unwarranted apologies for what was good faith and reasonable question to ask of a trainer. Reynolds demanded Baldoni remove the scene entirely. Lively refused to perform the lift scene in the end, even after it was rehearsed with a stunt double. In her own complaint, she flat out lies about the absence of the scene by claiming the scene wasn't in the film. The only reason the scene wasn't in the film is because Lively and Reynolds ensured it was taken out of the film. Accommodating Lively, Baldoni rewrote the scene with Lively despite the fact, for creative reasons, the scene was important to him as a storyteller and director. So this is when all of the paranoia starts, that he's fat shaming her and he's intentionally setting her up with weight loss people because he's trying to help her with her strep throat, with probiotics, which is so weird. And then it's by the time they get to set, that paranoia and that anger towards him morphs into now every perceived conversation she's having with him is somehow sexual. Looking at a video of a birth is somehow pornography. Having him kiss her during a scripted scene is somehow sexual harassment. Lingering kissing on the set is sexual harassment. It's sexual assault because he sucks her lip. It went from, "I'm not sure if I like your rooftop scene," to "you fat shame me and you're a sexual harasser." And it's because of Ryan's ego being bruised. Ryan wanted control as much as Lively. And his complaint doesn't actually spell this out in a way where you can see it directly. Like, it explains to you the timeline of what happens, but it doesn't explain that, like, it's this is the moment where everything changes. At this point, he rejects her and then the entire thing falls apart. He rejects a scene and then Ryan's ego is bruised and then suddenly the retaliation begins. And then you add to it that Ryan and Blake both have publicly talked about how having jobs where their significant other is in love scenes with someone else, it's awkward. And Ryan puts out a post on TikTok about how he was excited for his wife's movie, but he wasn't excited about seeing her making out with or making love to another man. And we know that, as Brian Friedman has said, these two love to leave breadcrumbs in how they mock and bully Baldoni through this process because, again, he's jealous. He's envious, he wants the film, and he also hates that he's the love interest. And they go after this concept of Nicepool, who they say is a vicious caricature of a woke feminist, before concluding the character's arc with his violent shooting death at the hands of Ladypool, a character voiced by Blake Lively. Upon information and belief, the Nicepool scenes were added to the movie and filmed in January 2024 after the January 4th confrontation in Reynolds and Lively's apartment. This is the confrontation where they meet with him about these supposed grievances they have against him about his the unprofessional set, and they have this 30 point or somehow number of points of all these offensive things that have happened to them, and they call it and relate to it as an ambush. And after they are ambushed with this, you do this or else or we're not coming back to the film, then he creates Nicepool and films Nicepool getting killed. And they're alleging that this Nicepool character is based on Baldoni. Well, I found I don't think this video has been seen, you guys. And again, I found this by doing a customized search for specific interviews with Ryan Reynolds during the time period between when the film was in production to before it was released. And I was looking for anything. I sifted through tons, dozens of interviews, and I found him speaking to an international journalist that was in a country that doesn't speak English, so there's subtitles that are in another language, and he speaks openly about violently killing Nicepool. And I didn't find him speaking about this in any English-based interviews. So it almost feels like he believed that this foreign junket that he did wouldn't be seen. Well, I'll show you now.
Well, I have a theme of that. I think I always kill myself in some way. And in fact, all three Deadpool movies, nobody's ever asked that, by the way, but I have actually, in every one of them, I kill a version of myself. And I think that to me is very important. I loved killing Nicepool because Nicepool's, as much as he projected that he was wonderful, he was a terrible human being.
So Ryan is known throughout the years to play other versions where he's himself, but he's also himself. So he has a fake bit where he pretends he has a twin brother and he does interviews with him. In his different films, he kills a version or another version of himself that's in the film. And in this case, Nicepool is his version that he kills. And he says that he enjoyed killing him. And he had this like really creepy look on his face. And he says because he's not a nice person. Now, in the film, when you watch him, you don't get the sense that he's not a nice person. He just comes off kind of disingenuous and like a woke feminist, right? And some guy that's like, he says he identifies as a feminist, which is what Baldoni claims to be as a feminist, an ally for feminism. And in this conversation, he explains why he's okay with killing Nicepool and why he liked killing Nicepool. And it's because of envy.
And I like that Deadpool gets to lean into that anti-hero thing and like gets to lean into his like childlike desires. I want that, be it Nicepool's guns, his gold-plated guns, or his dog that like really should be with Wade because the dog and Wade look the same. I like sort of acting out envy in that way because it's a very normal human feeling and it's something that is actually easy to play. And Deadpool's a guy that can kind of get away with it because his coping mechanism against shame is actually the same. Is actually Wolverine and Deadpool are the same. They both live in and chew and blow bubbles with shame all day long. My maladaptive coping mechanism is deflection and humor. His is violence. But there's more similarities than not. And those are incredibly interesting things to play with. And then
in the film, Nicepool is killed because Deadpool wants his gold-plated guns and his dog, not because Nicepool is a bad guy, even though Ryan says he's a bad guy and he enjoyed killing him. He's then killed by Ladypool in front of a flower shop. He then associates this feeling of envy and jealousy with shame and claims that Deadpool resorts and lives in shame and copes through shame, and his maladaptive behavior with shame and with envy, and he's feeling ashamed because he's envious, is violently retaliating against people. And he says, Ryan, that his maladaptive behavior is comedy. And he claims that comedy and violence somehow coexist in the same spectrum, which is weird. Ryan is very telling there. He is saying that if we're to believe that Nicepool is based on Baldoni, he's saying he's jealous. And he goes as far to say, I want that. What does Baldoni have that Ryan wants? A franchise. Deadpool at this point, this is probably the last one he'll make. The whole Deadpool franchise is kind of going by the wayside. The writer that creates the comic is leaving Marvel. He's been calling them out all over the world, all over the internet, has a whole podcast about how he was treated at the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere. That franchise is going away. And what better way for Ryan to get a new franchise than through bullying Baldoni into submission of getting him to sell his rights to the film and to the sequel. He has one franchise ending, and his wife could have the next big franchise. They could be the power couples. And because Baldoni, a year and a half before this, rejected him by saying that his rooftop scene was greatly different than what was in the film, what was in the book, and what was on the screenplay, and that because of that, he was reluctant to incorporate it. That slight was what set all of this in motion. You rejected me, and now you have something that I want, this movie. Couple that with Ryan's own insecurities of other men getting to kiss and simulate sex with his wife on camera, and it's like a perfect storm. He's viewing Nicepool, aka Justin, as a beautiful specimen that's coveted by many women, and he wants what Baldoni has, that film. But why? He already has so much success of his own, and Blake didn't like him. Or did she? I don't know. But it's the insecurity of Ryan that causes the issue to begin with. His insecurity that maybe Blake might catch feelings. It's not even that there were feelings to be caught. It's this perceived idea that it might happen because of his anxiety, of his narcissistic anxiety. And then how does he get back at him? Well, if you're not going to like my rooftop scene, I'm just going to take the whole damn film. The way that you can coexist with a narcissist that wants control like him is to constantly have to give in to him. And it was that creative exhaustion that landed Tim Miller on the end of I Quit, because he was creatively exhausted with the constant fighting with Ryan. And I think Ryan and Blake felt like if they could creatively and mentally exhaust Mr. Baldoni, the same would happen. But his motive is greed, power, jealousy, and rejection. And that clip tells me a lot. Reynolds' jealousy of other men, even speaking to or interacting with Blake on sets, is an issue. And it's partially a reason why he's on the set so much with Blake. She described on Jimmy Fallon a physical therapist that was very attractive that came onto the set of rhythm section because she had to have surgery to repair a tendon or ligament that she tore in her hand. And the physical therapist was this beautiful Italian man. And Ryan was arriving at set, and she was describing how he was telling her to breathe through the therapy. And she was worried that Ryan would hear this and that by hearing it, he would get the wrong idea. And she even admits that she is paranoid that something might happen to her with a man, even though there's no reason to believe that.
And my husband, we never work at the same time, but he showed up a few days late to after I'd already started shooting. But when my physical therapist enters, he looks like if like Zac Efron and like Fabio had a baby with like a Ken doll. And so he's out, and I just really wanted my husband, because I felt weird, like something was going on, even though it wasn't. I was like, just wake up. And then suddenly I'm hearing like Ryan starting to wake up, and then I hear Pierluigi say to me, he's holding my hand, he goes, inspiration, deep inspiration.
So he's a beautiful Italian physical therapist that is beautiful to look at. And she wants her husband on set because she's afraid that something is going on there, even though it's not. Does that sound familiar? And he's just trying to work on her hand, and she's viewing the way that he's telling her to breathe through the exercise as sexual. And then she's paranoid that if Ryan hears it because he's sleeping, that he's going to get jealous. I mean, that should tell you all you need to know. This man is jealous of any guy that has any proximity to his wife. And she's paranoid that innocuous things like a physical therapist telling her to breathe is sexual. If she's misinterpreting something like that, can you imagine her misinterpreting, a comment that her shirt and her outfit be sexy for a scene, even though that's what she wanted for her character? These clips keep on coming. And Ryan admitting that it's about envy and wanting something is proof that it just took the slightest rejection for this entire thing to spiral out of control. And who is behind all of this lawsuit and this battle? It's Ryan's ego and Blake's ego and their belief that everyone wants Blake and they don't want that. And their insecurity in their own relationship and their desire to have control over everyone. And that's why Justin's being smeared as a sexual harasser. I mean, she spent all that time talking about Pierre Luigi, who's simply a physical therapist, portraying him like he's some sort of sexualized man existing to sexually arouse her, and that she needs her husband there to protect her. What does that tell you about Blake and how they perceive the world? They are smearing Justin because they want something and they're jealous, and Ryan's jealous. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below about this retaliation campaign. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. It's been awesome to see so many of you subscribing. Thank you so much for subscribing. And as always, tell me all the thoughts that you're having in the comments below. Bye, guys.